What's going on, YouTubers and YouTubettes? It's your boy, CamATL. Welcome back to another NFL video. I'm not sure why I started it that way. Um, yeah, last night was great. Thursday night, as always, was a fantastic night. Almost got the takedown, almost got the takedown with the slash fave. Fave also dominated, so it came down to it was one of those nights where it came down to this guy or this guy at one of the spots. Like I already had the other spots, in there. I felt good about them. Came down to that one spot, and let me tell y'all, 18 passing routes by Jerick McKinnon, week one, and the shit paid off, didn't it? Anyway, so yeah, I hope you guys are having an amazing day. We had a great Thursday night. Excited for week two. GreenlightDFS.com joined the squad. Let me tell y'all once again, you know what I mean? Like, once again, the NFL player prop tool has nonstop throughout the week been putting us on amazing value before they're bumped. Like, almost every single play that we have posted on the NFL Access page for our Prize Picks members from using the NFL player prop tool has all been bumped in the direction that we played it. And that's because the player prop tool's job is to catch that value early before it's bumped. All right, so make sure you take advantage of the NFL player prop tool. If you do player prop betting in general, plain and simple, player prop betting in general, having the NFL player prop tool tab open on your screen or on your phone, you can just refresh it through the day and make sure you're not missing any big time value popping in is ideal. Okay? And if you're not doing it now, you will eventually because that is the way to play this shit. Trust me. The most important thing on Prize Picks and player props, as you all know, if you've been playing for any time at all, is catching the value early before it's bumped as bets come in. And the NFL player prop tool is meant to recognize that value before it's changed. All right. I am considering making one for college football. So I'm thinking about that. But yeah, the NFL player prop tool is fantastic. Excited about college football. We have some that we posted on for college football, and those were also bumped. So as time went on. So remember, when you're dealing with people who really are on top of their game when it comes to prize picks, the key is to stay up to date with my when I update everybody on Twitter at cam_ATL. I post when I add any picks or do any type of updates on the website for members. I make sure I update y'all on Twitter at cam_ATL all day long. That's all I do is look for value as it comes in and study DFS. That's all I do all day and hang out with my son. Maybe say what's up to my girl from time to time. But I mean, that's it. That's it. I hang out with my son, study DFS, and put these plays in early. And that's what y'all all need to follow along. All right, that's the best way to do it. That's where you can have the most success on MLB Prize Picks. I mean, we cashed 23 of the as of yesterday. Yesterday was a down day on MLB Prize Picks, our first bad day in a long time. But other than that, we had cashed before yesterday. We had cashed in 22 of our last 23 Prize Picks on baseball all because we're grabbing them before they're bumped and we're playing the right plays, plain and simple. So grab a hold of it. GreenlightDFS.com, week two. Let's get it, baby. So full slate breakdown. As you guys know, early on in the week, make sure you like, comment anything in the comment section, enter your name into that $100 giveaway, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. As you guys know, early in the week, we do the first look lineup. Then we come in and do the whole full slate breakdown on Fridays. I'm going to go position by position and talk about everybody I'm interested in, kind of break down the core group of guys that we're interested in position by position, and then send y'all on your way to get this money. All right? So greenlightdfs.com, join the squad. NFL player prop tool, remember, that's a refresher. It comes with your NFL package. Make sure you're utilizing that, refreshing it throughout the day, and grabbing the value that pops in on Prize Picks. All of the lines that are on the NFL player prop tool are specifically for Prize Picks. Okay, but you can compare them to other sports books if you're on other sports books or if you're on Underdog, blah, 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 and use it that way as well. All right? So let's get straight into this, man. It's going to be a big week, too, man. We started week two off with a bang with the Thursday night showdown. It was beautiful. So let's go ahead and get straight into this. So starting off at quarterback, let's talk about our options. My number one favorite quarterback is Derek Carr this week. Derek Carr is my number one favorite quarterback this week. He's not going to do a ton with his legs, but he really doesn't need to. With the addition of Devontae Adams, Derek Carr is going to have an amazing season. At 6'2", he's just too cheap against Arizona that Patrick Mahomes just absolutely carved up. On top of that, he's at home in Las Vegas. This is just a fantastic spot all around for Derek Carr. He's my favorite quarterback on the list. There's a few other guys that I'm considering that I'll talk about and talk about why as well. As you can see, this 3.9 guy, Daniel Jones, popping a little pretty hard. We'll get to him. But Derek Carr is my go-to guy. What's an interesting tidbit here is when it comes to passing yards expected this week, Derek Carr, from the Vegas standpoint, is expected to throw for more yards than anyone else on the slate. Either more yards or more touchdowns. He's got a higher probability of throwing 2 touchdowns than any other quarterback on this slate. Something like that. Yards and touchdowns. Like overall, Vegas loves Derek Carr as the favorite quarterback on the entire slate. I completely agree with Vegas here because it's in Vegas. How could they be wrong? But Derek Carr, I love Derek Carr, partly also because of the pairing with Devontae Adams, who's one of my favorite receivers, and we'll talk about him in a second. But let's take Carr off here. All right. But Derek Carr, fantastic spot going against Arizona. Like I said, they just got carved up for 37 DraftKings points by Mahomes. Don't overthink this at home. He's a fantastic option here. He's got great guys to pair with. Next up, I talked about Carson Wentz earlier on in the week. I still love Carson at 5'8". I don't like how close of a price he is to Derek Carr, and I like Derek Carr's weapons more than Wentz to pair up. So because of that, I'm leaning Carr. But Carson Wentz is a solid GPP pivot off of Carr at 5'8". He's in a dome in Detroit. Great matchup here. He's got some cheap targets that you can pair him up with and still get some other studs around that Washington stack. So Washington's an interesting stack because of their prices for these guys. Like the pairings that you can make with Wentz with these other guys in a great matchup in a dome is cheap. So it allows you to get these other spots. Like you're going to have to pay up for the Derek Carr stack with Devontae Adams. Derek Carr, you're not paying up for, but Devontae, you're going to have to pay up for to pair. So with Wentz, you don't have anybody you really got to pay up for with him. I mean, you've got value guys to pair with him. So Carson Wentz is in a solid position at 5'8". I really, really like him. Next up, let's talk about really my core of quarterbacks is really pretty low this week. Derek Carr, Carson Wentz feels great to me. Matthew Stafford's price at 6'3" is a little cheap here. The only concern you can possibly have with this matchup is that it could get out of hand. And I'm an Atlanta fan, and I hate to say that, but the Rams defense might do a number on Mariota this week. And I'm definitely worried about that. And because of that, the game might be more run heavy, might be a lot of Darrell Henderson, might be a Cam Akers get right week. And that's what kind of worries me about Stafford. But because of that reasoning, I think a lot of people won't be on him. And if Atlanta somehow can keep this competitive at 6'3", I mean, Stafford's not 6'3" often. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting a good value on a guy like Stafford who really can go off. You know what I mean? So Stafford at 6'3", I do have some interest in, but the game script's not looking great for Stafford. You know what I mean? At least with the Vegas, Arizona, I expect Murray to at least be able to score, hopefully, be able to score some points. Wentz, Detroit should be able to score some points against Washington. So with both those guys, we have those reasonings. But with Stafford, I'm worried about Atlanta here. They could really make it tough on Mariota, but we'll see. I'm hoping the best, obviously. Ideally, Atlanta wins. But that's probably in my dream world. All right, that's probably not going to happen. Daniel Jones against Carolina is another guy I'm very interested in. When it comes to prices, let's sort point per salary at quarterback. As you can see, Daniel Jones will top that list for me on the Greenlight Optimizer. He's 5'1", man. For a guy with the rushing prowess that Daniel Jones has, at 5'1", he's just a fantastic option here against Carolina. He's just, when it comes to value, he's magnificent. He's 1,100 less than Derek Carr, and he's got the rushing floor that Derek Carr does not have. Now, Daniel Jones isn't going to throw for the yards that Derek Carr is. Daniel Jones also doesn't have great options to pair with him. So, I mean, he's more of one of those guys that I would probably run solo out there, to be honest. I probably wouldn't pair him with anybody or don't care to pair him with anybody. On top, another reason why I don't love it for build-wise is because I like Saquon Barkley. And if you like Saquon Barkley a ton, pairing him with Daniel Jones doesn't quite make a ton of sense because then you're just, you're getting the pass game, you're getting the run game. It just doesn't really correlate fantastic. You really want quarterbacks with their receivers. So because of my love for Saquon, I probably won't have a ton of Daniel Jones, but you got to have respect for this dude if you run him solo. All right, if I run Daniel, I will tell y'all this, and I promise you this. If I run Daniel Jones this week, he will be ran solo, not paired with anyone. Okay? if I play Daniel Jones this week, which you can definitely consider because it's a good matchup against Carolina at home in New York. Obviously, he's got the rushing potential. So he's definitely somebody to consider. And I'm definitely not saying he's definitely in my pool of options this week. So Daniel Jones at 5-1 is interesting, but because of my love for Saquon, I probably won't have a ton of them. But if I don't play Saquon, I'm willing to run Daniel Jones solo for sure. All right, and we'll get to running backs in a second. But that's really it, y'all. I don't want to give you too big of a player pool because what's the point of talking about every quarterback on this slate and why I like them? You know what I mean? I'm going to really break these position by my player pool and the guys I'm interested in. And that's Wentz, Carr, Daniel Jones. We could talk about Trevor Lawrence for a second. This is a good matchup here against the Colts. Trevor Lawrence has the new weapon in Kirk that really shined in week 1. That's definitely going to be helpful for him. I think this is a close competitive matchup. We'll see, but who knows? I believe Jacksonville is an underdog, so Trevor Lawrence in a behind spot at 5-3 is interesting. But that's it. All right, that's pretty much it, man. Daniel Jones, Carr, and Wentz are my top 3 core quarterbacks. Those are the guys I'm really trying to get exposure to. If you have any other guys you have a ton of interest in and you're really, really excited about, let me know. Trey Lance with his rushing ability is interesting at 5-7 against Seattle. Seattle's defense looked pretty good against Russell Wilson, but that is just 1 week, so don't overanalyze it too much. You can play Cooper Rush if you want. I wish it was Cooper Kupp. I'd prefer that. But Cooper Rush, I mean, this is more of a Zeke game. This is more of a Zeke and Pollard just running the hell out the ball. They're going to have to throw because they're going to be behind against Cincinnati. So Cooper Rush might fall into value at 5K, but for 100 more, Daniel Jones with his rushing ability, I mean, you got to. So this core right here of quarterbacks. Let's move on to running backs, y'all. As you can see at the top of that list, Saquon Barkley. The sole reason why I might not have any Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley is in a fantastic position. Out of all running backs in the entire NFL, I believe Saquon Barkley played the most offensive snaps of any running back on any team. He played the most offensive percentage of snaps out of anyone. So they're really leaning on Saquon, and he absolutely destroyed week 1 at Tennessee. 18 carries, 164 yards, and the most intriguing thing about this is the 7 targets, 6 catches for 30 yards. Saquon is in a fantastic spot at home here. I really love Saquon. He's probably my favorite running back on the entire slate. And he's a guy that I definitely have big interest in. You can't go wrong with Saquon this week. Leonard Fournette. Let's talk some Leonard Fournette. All right, so Leonard is a guy that you need to keep an eye on. He's been limited through practices. Make sure he's 100%. I believe that he's going to be fine, though. I'm imagining he's going to be fine. Going against New Orleans here, you got to expect it's going to be kind of a more run-heavy game script. And Leonard Fournette, just like against Dallas, should be able to eat pretty well here. At 6'7", Leonard Fournette's poised to have another fantastic year this year. He's going to be, really carrying the rock heavy. He got 21 carries week 1, 127 rushing yards. He's another one of those guys who played a ton of his team's offensive snaps, which is always fantastic news. So he's a solid option as well. Who else do I want to talk about? Let's talk about Antonio Gibson against Detroit is definitely an interesting option as well. Obviously, you don't want Antonio if you play Wentz, or do you? Let's talk about that. So, Antonio Gibson's on the road in Detroit in a dome. That's always good for everybody. At 6'2" is a good price as well. Now, let's talk about the interesting part about Antonio Gibson. He did not get in the end zone week 1. He had 14 carries. Wish that was a little higher, but he got 8 targets, 7 catches for 72 reception yards. It's quite obvious that Carson Wentz was checking down to Antonio quite often, and he might do that same thing again here against Detroit. At 6'2", with the amount of targets he got, he's definitely has some interest for me this week. Antonio Gibson is definitely interesting. Carson Wentz is one of those guys that can hold the ball for a little longer than he should back there and then end up having to just dump it off real quick to his running back, and I can expect this to really be good. So on top of that, Sanders and Hurts both ran all over this team. So I'm expecting Antonio Gibson to have more success on the ground as well. So I really like Antonio Gibson. I think he's a solid option this week. Got to talk about Joe Mixon. This game script is just fantastic for Joe Mixon here. With Dak Prescott out, you got to expect Dallas to be behind here and be more of a pass heavy kind of situation. They're going to run it as much as humanly possible, and they're going to utilize Zeke. They're going to utilize Pollard as much as they can on that Dallas side to try to establish some run game. But eventually, there's going to come a time where they're going to have to just really throw. And on the Cincinnati side, they're going to be up and more of a run heavy game script. Joe Mixon's in a fantastic spot, man. Um, I talked about him last week in this position, and once again, he's in a fantastic position. All right, Leonard Fournette just carved Dallas up. Joe Mixon in this run-heavy game script. I really, really like this spot here. Not much of a overthinking type of thing for Joe Mixon. Don't overthink it. Matchup is fantastic. He's a solid option. All right, let's talk about Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams is another guy I have a ton of interest in this week at 6'5". Also, Jamal Williams is interesting if DeAndre Swift ends up not playing for some reason. Swift is Swift came out and said he's good to go for week 2. So, but keep an eye on it because I don't believe he practiced still most recently. So keep an eye on that. But if Swift is out, Jamal Williams is a lock. But let's talk about Javonte. Javonte at 6'5" for Denver. There's a really interesting thing that I wanted to point out here. As we know, DraftKings is full point PPR. Um, and Javonte Williams got 12 targets. Javonte Williams got 12 targets, 11 catches for 65 yards. Russell Wilson really leaned on Javonte Williams in this past game here. And now he gets a matchup against Houston. I think he's going to have a lot more success on the ground as well against Houston. It's a fantastic spot for him, and I think he's going to carve him up on the ground. I think he's going to get some exposure in the pass game. Hopefully this game stays competitive. But either way, either side it goes. That's the interesting part about Javonte Williams. If the game ends up being a blowout on the Denver side, then Javonte Williams is just going to get a ton of carries. If the game ends up being, Denver behind, then he's going to get a ton of targets. So the targets is very interesting to me. Obviously, they split those carries, which is a little bit of the worry always with a guy like Javonte, but the passing game exposure is just fantastic. So I really love Javonte. Definitely had to make sure I mentioned him. Anybody else that really pops as fantastic value? Let's see. Najee Harris against New England's in play at 6'2". Darrell Henderson Jr. So I do fully expect them to really try to get Cam Akers going. Cam Akers is a guy who's obviously a bright talent. Didn't get a ton of use in week 1, but here in week 2 in a game where the Rams should be up pretty easily and facing a team like Atlanta, I think they could really lean on Cam Akers, which worries me about Darrell Henderson. But with that same aspect, if Cam Akers is going to continue to not play a ton of snaps and, not get a ton of usage and Darrell Henderson is their running back number 1, then he's going to be fantastic at 5'7". But there is that question mark there because they obviously want to get Cam Akers going. I believe the coach came out and said, hey, man, we got to push for Cam Akers to get the ball. And Cam Akers is definitely a huge talent that could definitely cut into Darrell Henderson as the season goes on. The interesting thing here, though, Darrell Henderson played a ton of offensive snaps, like third highest in the entire league week 1. He played a ton. But part of that is because Cam Akers just wasn't having much success and just wasn't utilized in the game. So Darrell Henderson was just used heavily. So I like Henderson. There is that Cam Akers scare, but at 5'7", he's interesting still for sure in this game script where they should be up heavy. Christian McCaffrey every week is going to be interesting. I did not like the lack of attention he was getting from Baker Mayfield. I think Mayfield needs to fix that ASAP because if he utilizes Christian McCaffrey more, he's going to be way better off. McCaffrey only got 4 targets. So for a guy at 8'9" who only got 4 targets week 1, I do expect that to go up. I mean, you got to expect Baker Mayfield to come on, man. I mean, I'm not a Baker Mayfield fan. I don't think he's very good, to be honest with you. That doesn't, I don't love that he's not very good. But because of that, he should be utilizing a guy like Christian McCaffrey and be dumping it off heavily. And so eventually I expect that to be the game script every single time. But for right now, 4 targets, that's worrisome. But McCaffrey in full point PPR is always an option. DeAndre Swift, pay attention to him. He definitely got some usage in that Detroit offense, but he is a little banged up right now. Jeff Wilson is a solid option this week. You've got some injuries on that San Francisco side, so it's definitely a solid spot here against Seattle. And solid favorites as well. So at 5-1, Jeff Wilson should be a solid option as well. And that's about it, man. Saquon Barkley's my number one. I really love Leonard Fournette. Um, Joe Mixon in this game script's fantastic. Jeff Wilson with the injuries on San Francisco, he's going to be getting the start and a solid option in a favored game against Seattle. And that's really it. If you want to run back your Las Vegas stack with James Conner, you can. Jonathan Taylor's always in play. I don't need to mention him too much, but that's about it. All right, let's switch over to wide receivers. Devontae Adams is number one, no questions asked. I'm running Devontae Adams, most likely running him with Carr. I love that stack of these guys this week. There's nobody on Arizona that can possibly hold them, and I'm not going to waste too much time talking about him. Brandon Cooks, solid option here. Houston should be behind and have to throw a lot here, so this is a solid spot for this team, wide receivers at least. Brandon Cooks got 12 targets week one, 12. So when they fall behind here against Denver, they will definitely be looking to Brandon Cooks to have some success. And we saw what Geno Smith just did against Denver, so it's going to be interesting to see what we can get out of Brandon Cooks here. At 6K, he's interesting. Wan'Dale Robinson is a question mark for me. I like him. Like I've said earlier on in the year, I really think the Giants are going to utilize Wan'Dale Robinson as the season goes on. Will that be week two? Not quite sure. He did not play many offensive snaps week one. I believe he got injured, but he's good to go. He's expected to be active. And at only 3-2, like I said, I do have a gut feel that they are going to want to get the ball in Wan'Dale Robinson's hands. And when they do that, his value will be tremendous that week. Like somebody's going to get a takedown with Wan'Dale Robinson one of these weeks this year because he is going to be utilized heavy eventually. Because he's a good solid gadget player that they can use here. So I do think he's going to have some potential. Will I play him this week? Probably not, but the optimizer really loves him for GPPs. Michael Thomas at 5'8 is interesting to me. Like I said, game script should be leaning the Tampa Bay way. New Orleans will have to throw. Winston and Michael Thomas obviously have a nice connection, and it's going to be Michael Thomas. We know the talent level he has. He hasn't been on the field a ton as of late, but he's back and he looks good and he's a solid value at 5'8. Michael Thomas is normally a guy who's in the 7+ K ranges when Drew Brees was in back in the day. All right. So Winston is a guy that's got a serviceable arm. He can definitely air that thing out. So Michael Thomas is definitely interesting in a very positive game script situation here for Michael Thomas playing from behind. Christian Kirk had a big week one. I talked about him briefly in the first video of the year. He was definitely utilized heavy in the short preseason time that he got with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence quite obviously loves him. So this is definitely a guy that's got a high talent level. He's a guy that could definitely have a solid game here and a solid matchup against the Colts. I mean, the dude got 12 targets, 6 catches for 117 yards. So Kirk is just a baller, and he's a solid option at 5'7 for sure, especially if you somehow in GPPs have like Trevor Lawrence lines paired with Kirk, running back with Jonathan Taylor or something like that. You know what I mean? It's an interesting way to go. Deontay Johnson at 5'8 is a guy that I have some interest in. Deontay Johnson is, the quarterback situation is tough in Pittsburgh, but he got 12 targets, and that's what you want to see. You want to see guys who are going to be targeted heavily, and Deontay Johnson is that guy. He's continuing to pick up exactly where he left off, and Deontay Johnson is you know, what do you call it? A guy who just gets involved heavily, targeted every single week, week in, week out. Question is the quarterback going to be able to get him the ball? We'll see. But this is a solid spot for Deontay Johnson. Hunter Renfrow, if you really want to get heavy on that Vegas stack, Hunter Renfrow is an interesting option at 5'5", going against Arizona. If you go Carr, Renfrow, and Devontae, and then run back on the other side with, I don't know, Dortch. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting game. It's an interesting game script build right there. I'm interested in that. But as of with Renfro, he did get 6 targets week one. Devontae Adams being there is definitely taking away some target share from Hunter Renfro. But the interesting spot here is I do expect there to be some games where Renfro breaks out and has a huge game. With all of the attention on Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfro is going to have some moments where they're just not caring about him. And they're like, you know what, let this dude beat us if he wants to, but we're not going to let Devontae beat us. And there are going to be weeks where Renfro has solid weeks. And could this week be it? Maybe, but we'll see. Dortch. Greg Dortch at 3.5 is once again a solid option. I really like him as a run back for the Vegas stack. We got to pay attention to the Moore situation. Let me refresh on Rondale Moore. I believe Rondale Moore still hasn't practiced. He still has not practiced this week, so I'm not sure if he plays. It's looking like he's not going to. So Greg Dortch is going to be targeted heavily again, and at 3.5, he's one of my favorite value plays, especially with my auto love of Las Vegas. Running it, running it back on the other side with Greg Dortch makes a ton of sense. Because if I'm expecting the game to go how it is, gotta expect Dortch to be on the other end doing some big things. Uh, what else? Noah Brown at 3.8 is solid value, but you don't have Dak in there. I prefer him with Dak. His price is 3.8 because Dak's out, and you're going to have Cooper Rush throwing in the ball. But the game script will have Dallas behind, and Rush is going to have to throw it to somebody. Plain and simple. Cooper Kupp, only thing that worries me at 9.9 is the blowout and it being a run-heavy game script. But that's about it, y'all. We've touched about pretty much every receiver we like. Higbee's still at the top of my list at tight ends. Even though it's a blowout potential, it's just not a great position this week. Not loving the tight end position. Higbee kind of just sticks out for me at that position with this matchup. It's just in a solid spot for me. So he leans as number one. But we talked about Renfro pairing with Carr. Darren Waller pairing with Carr and Devontae Adams is a solid option as well. And that might honestly be the way that I end up rolling because of how much I hate tight end this week. But Darren Waller's a solid option, but you are paying 5.6 comparative to 4.2 for Higbee. And Higbee got a ton of targets week one. But is he going to get that many targets in a blowout? Most likely not. But Waller is in a very solid position. He got 6 targets, 4 catches for 79 yards. I really like this spot for Waller as well, and I think he's a solid option at a position that's pretty weak. I mean, a lot of these guys, they're just priced too high. You know what I mean? They're just not priced where we want to see them. And so it makes the tight end position kind of real scarce. So Zach Ertz running back your Las Vegas love if you have a Las Vegas stack. Tyler Higbee as just like a safe plug-and-play tight end, or Darren Waller to pair up with Carr. That's about it. I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. When it comes to defense, it's the Cincinnati Bengals and only the Cincinnati Bengals for me. If Cooper Rush comes out and dominates, then so be it. But I fully expect the Bengals to get up here and Dallas to make some mistakes trying to catch up. And at 2-2, it's just too cheap. Plain and simple, the Bengals D is too cheap against a backup quarterback who's going to be trying to throw to keep up with the high-powered offense of the Cincinnati Bengals. So, with that being said, that is it. Good luck on week 2, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you absolutely dominate. I want to see some people hitting me up next week and being like, man, I got a takedown, and I'm going to be so happy to see that. Excited for everyone, whether you're a Greenlight member or not. I'm excited to see how everybody does week 2. Good luck. Week 1, don't let you get down on yourself. I saw nonstop on Twitter people just being sad about their week 1 performances. It's week 1, y'all. You know what I mean? Don't stress it too much. Don't let it bother you too much. Just stick with your game plan that has worked for you. If you have one that's worked, if no game plan has ever worked for you, then you need Greenlight DFS. Period. All right. Just let us help you. Anyways, thanks for watching as always, and I'm out. Peace.